Special thanks to all the sponsors of the Myth Information Conference 3 in October. Author of the new book, Mythos Christos, Edwin Herbert, Atheist Republic, Godless Engineer, Kenosha Racine Area Freethinkers, Atheist Community of Milwaukee, Freedom from Religion Foundation, the Atheist Alliance of America, the Sophia Wolf Quadracci Memorial Fund for Stem Cell Research. And please remember that your purchase of a $300 sponsorship table for the event includes 1 ticket to the conference and 1 ticket to the VIP party, and also gets you mentions on all of our social media platforms as well as this podcast. And a very special shout out and thank you to all of our patrons who support the show. Welcome back live. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Mythicist Milwaukee Show. I'm your host, Rob Moore, the duly designated deacon of doubt in these parts. You can find me at Robin Arrow, where I just retweeted this show today, finally. With me, as always, my good buddy Brian Edwards, the co-host with the Mo-host. What's up, Brian?
I'm excited to talk to Jason Heap, a bastion of intellectualism.
You've been talking to him, so I'm going to take your word for that. He seems a little bit pretentious to me at this point.
I don't think so. He's smart. He's
smart. He's got an accent, man. That doesn't mean smart. We'll have to see what he's got to say.
And also on the docket will be Father Joseph. We're going to talk to him a bit too.
Joseph Kyle Richards, director of Batman and Jesus, the movie, coming up when probably next year. 17 probably when it's finished at some point, but a project that we are all very excited about and all personally involved in, with parts and being extras and set hands and stage help and grips and stuff. So we've all been working on that. And the trailer to be shown at the Reason Rally coming up here in just 2 weeks on June 4th in Washington, D.C. Hope to see everybody there, where we will screen a trailer of Batman and Jesus. Very excited about that. It's going to go up at 6 o'clock right before the Wu-Tang Clan does their thing.
So a trailer for the movie is going to be shown to the 40 or so thousand expected people at the Reason Rally.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It really is cool. There's only 4 or 5 video clips all during the day, which is like an 8 or 10 hour event. And ours is the headline video clip there right at the end. Everybody should be pumped. The crowd should be completely jacked from a whole day of great speakers, some of whom are with us in the studio today. Yes. And may join us for a word after the main guests get going. But we do have a different show because everybody is right in studio with us today. It's always fun. Bunch of chairs around the table, and we just talk. And first up is Joseph Kyle. He actually is directing Batman and Jesus, and he joins us to tell us something about it. Joseph Kyle.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Thanks for coming, man.
You're welcome.
You're the Thin White Duke. You're the auteur. You're the man. You're the director around here. How exciting has it been for you to kind of discover this niche, this atheist kind of gathering in Milwaukee that has endeavored to shed a light on the secular community, you yourself being a unique member of the group with your talent set? What's it like to mix filmmaking with atheism?
Well, it's been very interesting because I guess this hasn't really become a trend yet. There's not a lot of people making videos on this topic right now, so we can kind of stand out more, I think, and in that way, a lot of people in the community have embraced these videos more than I get from other topics I might cover, because they're a lot more oversaturated. So I guess needing to have a little more courage in covering this topic makes it stand out more.
Well, it could be a lot of people don't have the talent to make the high-quality videos that you have made. I've been really impressed with them. But I talk about Batman and Jesus, and the name right away. It looks cool. The flyers for it are really neat. But what is it? If people say, that's awesome, the name gets me. What is Batman and Jesus?
Perfect. And yeah, that's the idea, is to make you immediately ask the question you just did when you see the title. It's like, what connection is there with Batman and Jesus? Which a lot of people have. The connection I'm making and focusing on is the evolution of mythology over time. So how do these characters change in having so many authors over such a long period of time? With the quantity of scriptures written, a lot more than what's in the Bible, it's a lot more comparable to the volume of comics and different adaptations that you get on some of these superheroes than it is with other things in history, where there's some disagreements, but there's certainly not totally different accounts like you find in the scriptures, even in the Bible.
So is like, what are you saying? Like, so the Christianity of 1,000 or 2,000 years ago is different now. It's evolved, and is it the same way with the Batman lore? And is that what you're going to draw the comparisons to?
Yeah, definitely. And it's you can find this in far less of a time span than 1,000 years. In Batman, it might change in 5 years, and the same is true with the scriptures. There's stuff that might have been written in, the year 50 maybe. That might be totally different than what was possibly written in 80. It doesn't even need 100 years to totally change what it is.
Okay, and some would say that Christianity is just was a break-off sect of like Hebrew Judaism. I mean, is that true? Is Batman a break-off of the Scarlet Pimpernel or some of these?
Yeah. So
Pimpernel.
Zorro is another one, or even Superman being the direct, obvious one. But yeah, the idea of these wealthy people fighting crime at night in a disguise certainly predates the specific idea of a superhero, which more or less starts with Superman and Batman. But there's lots of similar things before that. There's people in costumes, there's people with superpowers, and obviously you could easily compare Jesus to Superman.
Along with how the two mythologies evolved, is there also parallels with how they both perhaps started as myths and became religified, if you will?
There's definitely that with Christianity, but whether or not that happens with Batman, I guess, is yet to be seen. But there's certainly people who hold it nearly in that regard. But whether it's to the degree of worship, I think it's too obvious to everybody still that is.
But does the movie address how that could possibly happen?
Definitely, and that's part of what we'll see in the teaser trailer. Actually, we barely even address Jesus, religion. But you get the idea. Well, you'll see. You'll see when.
So atheists and religious would like this movie?
I think it's interesting for both. I mean, I grew up Catholic, and I was always told to question things. So I don't see any reason why you couldn't watch this film as a believer or a non-believer. And I don't think that what I'm trying to get across here is condemning either or. More so, let's just address there's a lot of misinformation. Let's look at what really happens, and let me give you some comparisons so you can put this in a framing that you understand in a modern context.
Awesome. And it's due out in 2017, as I know, and there's a newsletter that's keeping up updates. And how can people sign up for that?
From what I understand, you can go on Mythicist Milwaukee website and sign up for that.
I should have known that.
I don't know.
Okay.
It's mythicistmilwaukee.com. You can do a lot of things there.
Yeah.
And you can join
that's our newsletter, right? There's not a separate Batman.
No, there
and
is.
Jesus.
No, but there'll be a link to it. It is a separate one. But, of course, as always, you can go right to mythicistmilwaukee.com and find everything you need, including ways to buy a membership and support our Patreon as well to continue bringing the shows like this that we do.
I'm not hip.
We all knew that, man. Try to come up with some new information here today. How would you, Kyle, categorize this film? You've previously made a horror film. This film's not a documentary. It's not a mockumentary. It's not really a fiction film. What do you call this film?
Well, I mean, we're calling it a documentary, but I mean, it's definitely more of a documentary than a narrative story. But there's definitely a narrative to it, although that's true with any documentary that's good. But I don't know. It's an educational film, so maybe that's It could be
defies categorization. There's nothing wrong with that, man.
Maybe
breaking new ground in niche atheist filmmaking and a new kind of a new film.
Yeah, it's definitely got more than just documentation and informative stuff. It's more artistic than that, I guess.
Well, all of us are really proud to be involved in it. We got it funded, we got it produced, and we're doing it. We're making it. We're getting it done. You're getting it done, and all of us are pitching in and living in your world, man. Seeing the camera, man, that dude with that camera, man, that was like being in Hollywood. The camera didn't move, and he like jumped around and stuff. Ooh,
fanboy. Good team. Lots of good guys, and I'm happy to have the team that we do have. Yeah. From top to bottom, it's really a good support.
And speaking of theists, thanks to the Calvary Church, right? Is that what it's called? The Calvary Church for letting us use the space for that shoot.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really nice for us to have allies in the religious world. And I spoke to a Unitarian again yesterday and thanked her for helping us promote, as always, our stuff. So we do want to make sure that everybody understands that this film is something that can be enjoyed by people on both sides of that fence, as is the debate series Buzzed Belief, which is coming up October 21st. Check that out online too at Mythicist Milwaukee.
Yeah, and I've been updated that there is a Batman and Jesus Facebook page, right?
Yeah.
Facebook page.
Find it on Facebook.
You can log it on there.
Like it, put your comments in, tell them that you want a part, whatever it is that you need to get off your chest.
Yeah,
Still don't know what Instagram is, but there is a Facebook page for this.
Yeah, there's Facebook for Batman and Jesus. Batman and Jesus, easy to find. Twitter at Batman Jesus Film. And then my company, Kingstar Productions, at Spadeheart Club, is on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Kingstar Productions. Website is spadeheartclub.com. And we have a new series coming out on May 30th, Memorial Day. And it's our new quarterly series, King's Tower Quarterly. And part of the show is basically updating the films that we're working on. So this first episode is going to feature a behind-the-scenes peek at filming of Batman and Jesus, particularly a cinematic scene, which you guys were there for as extras in the church. So we're going to put a behind-the-scenes of that. That'll be on Memorial Day.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, that was a lot of fun doing the filming. I had to bust out my black.
yeah, it's good. So the actor that played the priest in that scene will be kind of hosting this behind the scenes that'll be on the show. And then, of course, the teaser trailer is that Saturday, June 4th. So that's the big day.
Right.
Indeed.
And on both of these pages, Mythicist Milwaukee on the YouTube channel, also on King's Tower Production, you can see some other of Father Joseph, who I call him's work in the series Holy Shit.
The Holy Shit series.
That's fantastic. And an excellent 20 minutes, 3 different 20-minute versions. You will laugh.
You will laugh, and there'll be more of those to come in the future. Obviously, Batman and Jesus prioritized right now.
It's in a slight standstill from working on the film, but we're still kind of filming skits when the opportunity arises, and there'll be more episodes coming in the winter. So
good deal, and soon to be shared on Atheist TV.
Yes,
I look forward to that. Thanks, Kyle. You got anything else to add?
No, check it out, and it's exciting.
Good deal. Feel free to stick around as we talk to Jason Heap. It's the Mythicist Milwaukee show. We're having a special in-studio guest day right here. That was Joseph Kyle Richards, director of Batman and Jesus, and a member of the team here at Mythicist Milwaukee with some awesome information.
Fantastic, very talented director. I really enjoy the stuff that we've made so far.
It's Sunday at 2 o'clock, and we do the podcast every week at this time here in the Grand Avenue Mall, upstairs from the TJ Maxx. It's the Milwaukee Cooperative Space, and we don't mention them enough. We're in the storefront here in the window, and somebody mentioned, what do you geeks do in the window? Looking out on the mall, and we're like, we do a little podcast, and we need to thank the space for letting us do it. It's the Milwaukee Cooperative Space in the Grand Avenue Mall, downtown Milwaukee, where the asphalt is heating up finally. It was 70s and sunny, and finally, really good summer weather out there, Brian.
Yes, it is. I mean, I don't get out much, but I trust that that's true.
I like to paint a picture for the folks and give people an idea of what's going on. It's always here at 2 o'clock on Sunday, the Mythicist Milwaukee show, and we are happy to welcome from the UCO, or the United Coalition of Reason, it's Jason Heap. How are you, Jason? You've been waiting patiently.
I'm doing fine. I'm very flattered that you said something about being educated because of an accent. You reminded me that a few years ago I was traveling through Yazoo City, Mississippi, and I stopped at a Waffle House, and this lady came up with my order, and she asked if I wanted to accept some sort of literature from her, and it was clearly evangelical. And I said, no, thank you. I just need a napkin. And she's like, okay. Do you want me to pray with you before you have your meal? And I said, I'm sorry. I just want my waffles. Do you have any more syrup? And eventually, the lady was so furious that I wasn't allowing her to proselytize me. She just said, well, where'd you get your accent from? I was like, it's called education, dear. Needless to say, she saw her gratuity leave quite quickly, and it was a very unpleasant experience in Yazoo City, which is a real city, actually.
Yes, I have heard of Yazoo City. When I talk about your accents, that is the heart of it all, man. If you had a waitress come up and harass you like that, well, where else other than Mississippi, right? You
right.
Have a waitress say, sorry, yes, and edgy. She probably didn't understand a word you said, is probably what it was all about.
No, I think she just referred to me as that foreigner. So it was like,
you do. You sound British to the American ear. We were talking about it before, and it's just because you were educated by a European teacher of English to kids in Germany, as it happens. So a multilingual, a polyglot guy and an educated person. I
From
teased
Brite
before.
Divinity School, which is like a part of TCU, Masters in History and Religion in Oxford, and correct me if I'm wrong. Also in Sheffield Hallam University, MD in Education. Is that the British doctorate?
Postgraduate certification. No, the PhD is actually from Minneapolis.
Oh, see?
Oh, yeah.
That's where the accent's from.
Yeah, Olean's.
Yeah, it's when you hit your postdoctorate. That's when you get it.
Oh, I see. There you go. They just give it to you.
Yeah.
That's good.
Oh, that paper that says SNOB on the top of it. Is that what?
Yes. The piled higher and deeper.
Post-hole digger.
Post-hole digger. That's what I know, man, being a landscape tech. But that's what I do. What do you do, Jason, at UCOR? And what's your title? What's the actual UCOR about?
United Coalition of Reason. I'm the executive director there at the time. We began in February of 2009 with 3 local groups in Philadelphia and 1 billboard that effectively said, "Don't believe in God, you're not alone," and it had a telephone number underneath it. And from that 1 billboard and the 3 groups, we now have about 87 coalitions of 900 cooperating groups across this country, even one up into Vancouver. We've tried to replicate this model in Britain. Britain doesn't have the same issue of religion and government separation, and people that take religious belief to the nth degree in public life.
Yeah.
Yes, you would look at them and say, shh, "Don't be so loud with your religious talk. You don't want to sound American." And it is. It's just a very different culture. So, in some ways, recently we've been more nurturing the coalitions that we have rather than trying to build new ones. And we have some fine coalition coordinators out there. They've been doing Day of Reason proclamations, some even Darwin Day proclamations in Delaware. Atheist Helping the Homeless in Houston. Humanist of West Florida just donated 5 tons of food to a food bank recently. So a lot of what I'm doing now is trying to help raise the profile and visibility of non-theistic groups across the country, but also to change the public perception, which is it's a bloody difficult job to get people to realize that they are friends, co-workers, neighbors, just like anybody else, just without the theistic conversation.
Right. And although we're not as fundamentalist as, say, Pakistan and Iran, but if you look at churches per capita or centers of religious institution per capita, we're on that level.
Oh, yes. I mean, a couple months ago, I was going through Macon, Georgia, on my way to Tallahassee, and I kid you not, there was 5 beer joints and 12 churches within 2 traffic lights. And there was like First Baptist Church, Second Baptist Church, Two Speed in the Spirit, Double Predestination, Foot Washing, Hard Shell, Primitive Baptist Church, then the Methodist Church here and whatever else. Church signs in the South crack me up. I mean, the one that I remember on my way to Tallahassee is it said, what did it say? Jesus said, "I will love you whether you want me to or not." And I think, Jesus, no means no. I mean, these things crack me up to think, is this really the message that people want? And, I've traveled to so many countries over the years, and America and religion. Oh, yeah.
Rapey Jesus. It's a new meme. We should get going on that. Somebody work on a Rapey Jesus meme.
I've got the Nirvana T-shirt on now, so I mean, I'm sure Cobain would have come up with something like that.
Do you find it ironic that the world's first great secular democracy is, in fact, the world's biggest theocracy in a lot of ways?
No, I mean, I used to teach history in schools as well as doing tutoring at the University of Oxford with theology, and there's at the time of the beginning of American colonial history or pre-colonial history, the Elizabethan Test Act and the Church of England bishops were losing their jobs because of mandatory church attendance. I know, you look at me thinking, how the hell did that work? I kid you not. Go and look at your history. And yet, at the same time, the colonies, each one picking their own particular form of religious belief. Only Roger Williams in Rhode Island allowed for full religious liberty. If you're a Lutheran, a Jew, a Catholic, a Mohammedan, that's the only thing you knew of to call a Muslim, or an anti-theist. That was actually in his bloody tome of persecution, 1644. Be yourself, do your job, have a nice time, pay your taxes, and just get on with each other. This is actually, the idea of having Episcopal, Presbyterian, Baptist, Lutheran churches in the same street. This is a new concept in the greater scheme of the history of Christianity. Even up until the 1800s, pietists were being were being bollocked just for being a pietist from the state Lutheran churches. And yet Luther was running in 1517, and he created, the prince bishops, same mistake, same problem over and over again. You just think, just learn from it. And nope, it just has to be replicated here in that secular democracy.
Right. And by discrimination, you're meaning that you could actually tell one religious community that you cannot vote or hold office.
Certainly. I mean, even Calvin. Oh, yeah, that's a good one. And of course, for all of you theistic folks out there that say, "Oh, yeah, is my theology Calvinistic?" Shame on you. You need to go and learn. It's Calvin was a special kind of wonderful. I think we'll just leave it at that.
What did Calvin say? I mean, give the 1 minute Calvin.
Well, I mean, the thing is, whenever you hear people talk about, you are in need of salvation, that is the sort of total depravity of humanity. That's from Calvin's Institute. So this idea that humans, by their very nature, are imperfect, disgusting, vile, immoral, and therefore you need to have this. I mean, if you were looking at like early Baptist history in England, it was when Andrew Fuller wrote, the gospel worthy of all acceptation. That was the first time that real Calvinism infiltrated into English Baptist theology, which then was like, that's great, Bible and the flag, let's go out and find these people, you need to have God. We have had God for 5,000 years, and we've got about 500 of them. Why do we need to add yours to ours? Because you're depraved. Says who? I mean, my Bhagavad Gita and the Vedas tell me I'm doing okay. Oh, but you need to understand. On and on and on. And of course, unconditional election, it just, and his philosophy of how a government is supposed to be run, unless you were of that ilk, you couldn't hold an office in that part of Switzerland. And yet, other parts of the country at the same time, Anabaptists were being pushed under the water and drowned because they disagreed with Calvin or the state churches.
No, but Calvinism, this whole we need salvation, how is that any different than original sin and Augustine of Hippo?
Well, and the idea that Calvin didn't exactly go with the idea of peccatus fomis, which was that the male sperm is where original sin is transmitted. So, I mean, Calvin rejected that kind of stuff.
Wow. So it really gets deep, and the small pieces just splinter off.
Oh, the rabbit hole just goes and goes and goes all the way back to Docetism, which is one of the earliest Christian heresies, which is, in terms of what's in the canonical Bible, the 66 books, you have to understand the Gnosticism, and you have to understand Docetism to understand why certain Gospels and Revelations were kicked out. Because, heresy is really where we even got the Bible from.
And Docetism is the dual nature of God as human and deity, right? Is that right?
Or the rejection that Jesus was actually divine, and he just sort of had this appearance of being that way. It's like Casper, love it.
Right, just a really good-looking guy.
The rejection of that.
Right.
Fascinating stuff.
Defensive doctrine has accounted for tons and tons of inhumane acts over the years.
That is true. I think that the British isn't that saint of politicians, as Thomas More used to burn people alive in the square for printing the Bible into English.
Oh well, yes. I mean, you had Tyndale, and the Tyndale being burned with it, and some of Tyndale's translations they had kept around. And when they would burn heretics at the stake, like in the middle of Oxford, there's the Martyrs' Memorial for Cranmer. I mean, the Tyndale Bible was used as kindling.
Wow. It's hard to believe, too, that you could be the patron saint of politicians if you would ever burned anything at the stake, outside of maybe a Guy Fawkes,
Yeah, it's not very diplomatic.
Oh, well, actually, yeah, Guy Fawkes Day is great. It's almost like, are we celebrating the fact that Parliament wasn't blown up by Guy Fawkes, or the fact that someone had the pills to try?
That's really what it is, isn't it?
Well, that was my excuse. It's great, have a nice bonfire night.
Big bollocks on him.
Right, but that's the only thing I've burned ever at the stake. Well, I mostly just watched.
So go back to United Coalition of Reason. I'm very fascinated by the network of smaller groups because I run my own smaller group, or a group of us do. I shouldn't even say that anymore. We're getting going. It's Craft, the Kenosha Racine Atheists and Free Thinkers, along with the little secular community that we all found here in Milwaukee and found each other and got started with what we're doing now here. So we all have kind of a view on these tiny groups that are all over the country, and we're lucky enough to be with Melissa Pugh, too, who's got the AA of A, which is a similar bit. You've got a larger organizing factor trying to pull in these smaller groups and get them working together. And you mentioned 900 separate groups across this country. How do you join? How do you what does a smaller group do to and why should they in fact look for you as opposed to other organizing bodies?
Well, I mean, first of all, I'm not some non-theistic archbishop. I will never mind your own business. Each local coalition is comprised of at least 3 cooperating groups, and each of those groups is individual and democratic in the way that it's run. So because there's no top-down, mandate coming from myself to say this is what you must do, each local group then chooses to create a local coalition. So if you wanted to create something here in Milwaukee or northern Chicago because of the distance between the two of yourselves, please do it. Because Chicago is a massive, massive place. Mm-hmm. And I know you would say, well, how am I going to get even to Skokie from here? So the people come together and say, yes, we want to create an informal, local, loosely knit coalition. You do that. We will help you have a website underneath the unitedcore.org website, so you can say, okay, here it is. And what you do locally is really your business. It is, you understand your area better than I do in the middle of the dank of Washington, D.C., and you know what's needed here. You know what you need to do for visibility to also increase your membership and your reach. And then we in United Core are here to help you create better connections, whether it be through a national organization, something local, maybe even helping you set up a 501c3, crowdfunding, whatever else. We do a lot of media. So the whole, Ken Ham, I know you're not listening, so I'll just tell people anyway, that the whole billboard campaign of the Genesis and incest and genocide, that was my press release last Tuesday that has now gone to at least 20 full Google pages, including Australia, the BBC, all over that sort of stuff. That was my press release last Tuesday.
Congratulations on that.
Oh, that's my job. Supporting local people, getting the best that they want to out of that one. And again, trying to, the media actually turned on that. They took the side of the non-theist community to say, yeah, you're right. This is a bunch of nuts. So,
well, clue us in on what you're talking. How does this have to do with Ken Ham?
Well, I mean, Ken Ham, the Ark in the Park, or the Ark Encounter, is right in between 2 of our local coalitions. And they were also there at the beginning about 1.5 years ago, trying to stop the Kentucky funding from going to that one. So they were presenting evidence, again, grassroots type stuff. Why else would you want to become a part of United Core? Because I don't ask money. What I do is completely free, and I give my time freely for people because I'm more interested in building sustainable and strong grassroots rather than attracting attention to me. There's plenty of stuff out there.
So what's happened with Ken Ham and his ARC? I mean, I understood that they raised an enormous amount of state bonds. Probably 2/3 of the funding was through state bonds. But ultimately, even though this serves a religious purpose, that they're good to go. Has that changed?
I don't know much about that particular situation to comment on it, but what I can say is that the money that was raised for the billboard was the protest billboard. They had to go through various people, and this one said no, that one said no, that one said no. Then they said to me, well, Jase, how can we get our message out there? So I just use the media and set the dogs barking. And so now because of that, it's raised more questions with other media outlets starting to ask the difficult questions, such as, is there being any government fund using for this one? Because again, let's just set up some, Sikh park, Guru Nanak land. Let's just Guru Nanak land.
I would go to that.
I would too.
Rolls off the tongue.
Oh, the Sikhs are great.
Sikhs
folks.
are great, man.
The free langar and Kara Prashid, you'd love it. But, let's just create Guru Nanak land and then go and say, okay, Milwaukee, I'd like to have something that's going to create this to put my sincerely held belief out there. But it's going to be good for the economy because it's going to bring in tourist money. Again, that's a fine line. And the politics involved are beyond me. All I know is that the Tri-State Freethinker, Jim Helton, and then the 2 coalitions in Kentucky were saying, we want to make sure that people understand our point of view, which is if it could have a religious theme to it, then it needs to stop. But at the same time, not look like a bunch of, angry people trying to take down the establishment.
So the point is that it's a lot easier to get up a billboard that says, we believe in God, join us, than it is, we don't believe in God, come join us.
Well, I mean, Ken Ham's billboards were to all of our intolerant liberal friends. I mean, that's how he started it off. And that was considered to be apolitical speech. It was also considered to be a religious speech. How? With the, with the great big picture of the ark on it. Okay, incest and genocide. Wow, that's not very diplomatic, but what the hell? Have a nice time with that one. But they said that was a bit too hot, but the other ones weren't. Or for that matter, if you go and drive through the South, I've seen some things like, life begins at conception, you're killing something up until 6 weeks. And I think, no, that's not scientifically verified, but that's okay. The billboard company will take that kind of copy. And that they won't put up a billboard that someone in Florida wanted, which was, don't believe in God, join the club. Not poking fingers at anybody.
Right. No, I know what you're talking about. It's hard to think of an example, but there's offensive billboards on that side too, where really creepy things they try to get across.
I still don't think we have a right, to not be offended. But you were mentioning religious education, and you've done this. Have you taught history and philosophy in religious courses? And you mentioned to me earlier that we're in America very religiously illiterate. Like, what do you mean by that? And talk to me about how religious education could actually help.
In the beginning of when religious education became compulsory in the UK, which was the Butler Act in 1944, that eventually became Act of Parliament in 45, the Butler Act was actually there to strengthen Britain's religious bond. And of course, this is at the tail end of the Second World War, so it was almost like a holding on to the land of hope and glory, which please, Britain was still rationing bananas in the 50s, and America's out there with 3 cars and Fonzie and whatever, the Bronze Fonz. It's here. Everyone, if you're listening, come to Milwaukee, see the Bronze Fonz and laugh. But that in itself started off with being a daily act of corporate worship, Bible readings, and things of that nature, because again, Church of England is there. As Britain opened its doors to more and more immigrants to rebuild through what was the empire, now called Commonwealth, it began to bring in a multiplicity of belief. And so you have the Rastafarians coming in and settling in this part of London, Sikhs coming in, Hindus coming in, Buddhists coming in. And over time, about in the 60s, Britain began to realize, okay, Christianity is not the only way of doing things here in this country. So the religious education curriculum changed as modern-day Britain changed. So these days, if a student is in the state-maintained schools, which is like an ISD, you will study Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, and Sikhism, in addition to other worldviews, such as humanism, which has just come into the curriculum thanks to the British Humanist Association, Wiccan, Jain, Baha'i, whatever. You can do that for the purpose, actually, of understanding about other people's beliefs, practices, culture, and at the same time, understanding how to use that civilly in public discourse. So, there's a recognition that we're all different. There's a recognition of needing to create space for everybody to have their feet at the table. Again, humanism, atheism, feet at the table, and not fearing people. And I've only been back to the States for about the last year and a half, and I just see fear of xenophobia. Just, I don't understand you, therefore I'm going to fear you, and I'm going to go to a polarized opposite. Because I don't understand you, you must be wrong because I'm right. America still, I don't know, it just feels like it's reticent to open up and say, all right, you do things a bit differently, let's talk. I just want dialogue more than anything else.
Well, sadly, like with everything else in America, a social progression where you have to import from other places, and this is no different. Is there any movement afoot to get that kind of education into elementary schools in America at all? Do you know of anybody doing that fight?
You can. And what level do you teach it on? When's the right time to start this?
Oh, in Britain, I mean, it's in the state schools it's mandatory from like ages 6 to 16 years old.
That's what I'm talking about.
Here in the States, there's a wonderful, wonderful humanist chaplain in Arkansas named Jim McCullum. Jim's a decent old guy. I love him to bits. And Jim was in 5th grade in the 1940s. I think it was 1948, when his mother challenged to the U.S. Supreme Court to make the teaching of religious education illegal in American schools. Now, I support that because as somebody who used to teach religious education in Britain, I was also monitored by the General Teaching Council of England. And if I was to try to push one belief onto somebody else or even hint at proselytizing, that would be considered unprofessional behavior, and I would be dismissed from that post.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I would trust people to have the emotional intelligence here overall to be balanced in the way that they present things, because just look at a school. Well, the Ten Commandments monument's been out there for 70 years. It needs to stay because it's never offended anybody now. And so it's still an emotive response. So I just sort of look at it as saying it's too late to go back on it because of the law. But at the same time, local grassroots people, when you're out there doing good without a God, when you're out with the blood drives, when you're out donating scientific equipment to schools, and somebody says, "Who are you?" "I'm a humanist. I'm an atheist. I'm a skeptic. I'm an agnostic." "Really? I didn't know you believed in morals." "Sure." And there you have it. So the sort of belief in action locally is what changes things to me, rather than sitting and waiting for something huge to happen come from Washington, D.C.
It sounds like it's easier to not teach any of it than to try to trust people to teach it fairly.
And well, since we don't have a Common Core and all schools are run locally here, it's going to be very hard to do this. So somebody may be giving a very balanced view of religions, and somebody else may be teaching Christianity is all good, Islam is all bad, or vice versa.
Right, but the kind of education he's talking about is something that it's so important to me. I've got grade school kids right now, and I want the local groups to be able to try to do something about this if they possibly can. The way that the schools in this country indoctrinate your kids subliminally, subconsciously, it's just there. All of those people are Christian. They all think that there's nothing wrong with it, and who could it possibly offend? And the end result is, as hard as you try to keep your kid balanced, he has all of this Christian information and input and stimuli coming at him all the time, both of them. So no matter what you do, they end up being indoctrinated to some form of God belief from the Judeo-Christian mythology.
The God belief itself, I don't think, is the problem as much as how you might act on that.
Well, but my point is that what we do with mythicism, it's great for all of us to discuss the mythicism behind the religions of today. But what we need is for the children to understand from age 6 or from an early grade level that there are a million different philosophies, and everybody's got a way of thinking about these things. And if they do that, they can come to their own conclusions later on, instead of being simply indoctrinated into one way of thinking. And my frustration is, and I think that it'll probably never happen, and further, one of the good reasons that it'll never happen is what Jason just expressed, that you can't reliably trust these people to teach objectively when they're coming at it from a Christian viewpoint.
Well, I'm one of the 2 humanist chaplains at American University in Washington, D.C., and there's about 17 other chaplains that are on that faculty. More often than not, I will have students from, Jewish backgrounds or Hindu backgrounds coming up and saying, "I didn't realize that, that's what humanism's about," because they've grown up and here they are 20 years old, about to go off into the world, perhaps doing a master's degree or getting a job. And for the first time in their life, they're coming to terms with, what does it mean to be a humanist? Or, I thought all of you Catholics believed X, Y, and Z. Why? Because that's what I was told. And so this myth information, love your conference because it's on our page. The misinformation is there, and therefore it now has created this sort of cognitive dialectic of saying, I was always taught that. Because, again, in the British schools, I used to actively teach critical thinking. Free thought is not critical thought. I can think for myself and not really be critical. And when students are faced with new information, they have to say, okay, well, that doesn't quite gel with what I've always thought. Time to start the conversation, whether it be through personal study, lectures, making a new friend, and dispelling that misinformation.
And without the critical thinking and without the conversation, I think that leads to polarization.
Oh, God, of course. I mean, teachers at the moment are so worried about making adequately yearly progress. They're interested in high-stakes examinations because of performance-related pay that's going through American teachers right now. If I was a teacher, I would be thinking, I don't care about teaching critical thought. I need to preserve my job. And if that means pushing you with information that you need to regurgitate on a high-stakes exam, that's going to take priority and precedence. But at the same time, not allowing people to learn how to think critically is a disservice to lifelong learning. because we never stop learning until we're dead. So it's a new tool that people are not being equipped with, and the place they should be equipped with is in our schools.
Okay, so you really feel like having this presented is going to give the people the information they need to make correctly examine this, to not quickly jump to, if you're here, you're in this category, and just that polarization. Because I see that in Europe. The rise of far-right groups in Europe bothers me, and sometimes I wonder, are they getting this too? I mean, why is Europe, who may be doing this more, running into that problem?
Again, having lived there for so long, I think there's a frustration. There's been a little too much moderation. Sometimes PC has taken priority over actually doing something about it, and people don't feel as if something is being done, but it's just a lot of dialogue and verbal diarrhea that they've dealt with over the years. And when you don't feel as if you have a voice, you're going to storm the Bastille. And there are certain parts of Europe that are political hot powder kegs, where people feel disenfranchised. They feel as if they've had to just suck it up without really saying, but this is what I think and feel about something. And if you're cut out of the democratic process, you're going to express your anger that way. We have people like the English Defence League or the British National Party that disgust me. And I feel that they should know better. But at the same time, maybe they weren't taught how to critically examine things. Maybe they didn't walk down the street and say, oh, look, it's a Gurdwara. I wonder what's going on in here. Not everybody is going to be, prepared and ready for that. And at the same time, to make it a political issue that just says, no, we're now going to mandate that this is the way that it's going to be without really allowing for a democratic process, that's also, I think we will see negative fruition of that probably within our lifetime as more and more rise to radicalism comes, because you don't become radical for something if you feel that it's moderate.
Right.
And that immediate black-white bifurcation, polarizing, we're close to that.
And you consider yourself a centrist then?
Very much so. The tightrope, in the middle of the tightrope, it's scary as hell when you look down because the platform is safe. I have cut my feet on the road less traveled over my lifetime, and being in the middle, I count my friends from many different backgrounds and religions. I much prefer that than just saying either you're for me or against me, because we're seeing that in American politics right now, the kind of rhetoric that's out there. And to me, that's unhealthy. And what would that do? You're going to create an atheist orthodoxy because, oh, well, you don't accept this, therefore you're not one of our people. Who are you? I mean, that's also unhealthy. So, but again, I don't tend to follow people. I've always been a maverick of my own.
Speaking of that, I think we're finally seeing in history a change where people are coming together. The atheists of old who don't agree about anything are starting to put that aside and move forward on common goals. So I think we're seeing a synergy, correct me if I'm wrong, that we've never seen before. And our involvement in the movement has led us to the Reason Rally, where hopefully that's demonstrated. We have atheists coming together of all sorts, and being involved in it has taught me that there's never going to be any kind of complete accord. There's hate emails that come in regarding some of the speakers, and that just proves the diversity of the effort, I think. Are you going to be at Reason Rally, Jason?
Yes, we'll be running a United Core booth and distributing literature, asking people to really just to sign up to our free newsletter, because we want folks to know why an interfaith council that is now run by a humanist in Lynn County, Iowa, is important, and why, again, atheist helping the homeless in Houston, why is that important? Or having so many humanists at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio. They've got so many that they now have to have 2 back-to-back because the Air Force Base cannot accommodate enough people that say, my sincerely held belief is as a humanist, and therefore I expect to have my needs met, rather than saying extra duty for you, or you have to sit in your quarters. Those are the things that we focus in our newsletter because it's of what local people are doing, and local people need to be highlighted, celebrated, more than, as far as I'm concerned, more than the big celebrities and the household names. Come on, again, are we creating an orthodoxy? Let's not do that. Let's realize that there are local people that are rolling their sleeves up and deserve recognition on a nationwide level.
Right. And ultimately, when that you're underway in that effort, but once that's achieved, it seems like then you want to be part of a larger conversation. and either in politics or just change.
Oh, I don't see myself as a politician.
But I mean, getting into the conversation.
Oh, certainly. I mean, because that's the whole deal. I mean, my life previously as a former Christian minister was trying to find more and more people to get their feet under the table because, feminist theology, womanist theology, theology from gay and lesbian perspectives. There's a whole corpus of that stuff out there. To me, it was a matter of saying, life is more rich when you draw from a wider palette rather than just saying it has to be this way. Making it having to be this way, it goes back again to that defense of doctrine and orthodoxy that I find to be so caustic. So I just want to get as many folk involved and say, look, let's all get some voices out there because that's really what the democratic process is about.
That's a good point. But this I kind of think leads into free speech. Like, what voices can be heard? What concerns me a little bit is the squelching of free speech on campuses and maybe even in Europe where it's getting a bit PC. Is it okay for a Muslim student union to bring in like a radical speaker like Anjem Choudhury or another university to bring in, say, Tommy Robinson of the EDL?
There is, again, from the perspective of what I've seen in Europe, there comes a point where your free speech stops when it becomes considered to be hatred to somebody else. There was a man called Abu Hamza many years ago in England who hid behind that for a long, long time. And his rhetoric was anti-American, anti-British, anti-Western. And you think, well, if you really hate it that much, get out. Oh, of course not, because he was on government benefits and he was doing pretty damn good for himself compared to the average British worker who, through their workaday jobs was barely able to keep food on the table when it was about to be an austerity measure. And when you look at that kind of abuse of the freedom of speech and the abuse of the freedom of religious expression, then you look at something else and say, okay, well, I find that offensive, therefore you need to stop. Again, there has to be something in between that. Those are two polar opposites, but
but finding that space in between, and it seems like if you are not completely in line with, say, a third of the students in the university, you're not going to be able to speak there. I mean, it seems like Bill Maher was disinvited from Berkeley, and that seems like he's hardly a radical.
Everyone tends to judge things from their own perspective, and what I consider to be radical or liberal to somebody else, they might just sort of say, "Really, that's quite conservative views." I mean, someone like Bill Maher, I'm actually rather surprised that Berkeley said no.
Everything is relative here on the Mythicist Milwaukee show, and we are talking to Jason Heap. He's the executive director of the United Coalition for Reason, and he thoughtfully brought up the word myth-information. The Myth-Information Conference itself coming up. It's number 3 coming up already, October 21st. We want to make sure everybody gets their tickets for that. You can get them online at mythicistmilwaukee.com to see Dr. Robert Price debate Dr. Bart Ehrman in the huge Mythicist debate that we've all been waiting for. And it's now time for our weekly feature we like to call Myth of the Day. Here with today's Myth of the Day is Mythmeister himself, Antonio. Take it away, Antonio.
And thank you so much, Jason, for being here today. We appreciate it. And we'd also like to thank all those other individuals that have thanked and retweeted and liked your presence on today's show. It seems you've brought some big hitters today, Jason. We have Uncouth Atheist. We have Jason Breeden, a senior minister of the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis. We also have Atheism UK, which is the first time they've retweeted one of our tweets. Also, Mandisa Thomas, who is the president of Black Nonbelievers. In addition, Black Nonbelievers at Reason Rally also liked your presence today on our show. I'd also like to say that Allie Jackson, CEO of Atheist Republic, if you don't know who they are, just look them up on Facebook and look at the millions of followers that they have. We'd also say thank you to all of the team members that have liked your presence on today's show. So going back to the education that some of us would like to see in our schools, I will relate that to our myth of the day. Similar to current sentiments among many across the Muslim world with regards to the depiction of the Prophet Muhammad, within the early Christian church, the depiction of Christ in pictorial form was also controversial. The only Christian art for which we have of around the first century written and physical evidence is art in the form of symbols that could be used either in a non-Christian or in a Christian context. Consequently, it is generally not possible to distinguish a Christian use of a given image on an object of that period from a non-Christian use. Most of the early surviving Christian art comes from the late 2nd to early 4th centuries on the walls of Christian tombs and in the catacombs of Rome. Initially, Jesus was represented indirectly by pictogram symbols such as the ichthys fish, peacock, or Lamb of God, among others. There is no physical description of Jesus contained in any of the canonical Gospels. In the Acts of the Apostles, Jesus is said to have manifested as a, quote, light from heaven, but temporarily blinded the Apostle Paul. The book of Revelation makes a reference to a vision the author had of Jesus, quote, someone like a son of man dressed in a robe reaching down to his feet and with golden sash around his chest. His head and hair were white like wool and white as snow, and his eyes were like blazing fire. His feet were like bronze glowing in a furnace, and his voice was like the sound of rushing waters. In his right hand he had 7 stars, and out of his mouth came a sharp double-edged sword. His face was like the sun shining in all its brilliance. There was no scholarly agreement on the race or appearance of Jesus. Over the centuries, he has been depicted in a multitude of ways. After the adoption of Christianity as the only permissible Roman state religion under Theodosius I, ending official state support for the traditional Hellenic religions and customs, Christian art began to change, not only in quality and sophistication, but also in nature. One last piece I'd like to say. Jesus inspired the Apostle Paul to write in 1 Corinthians 11:14, quote, does not even nature itself teach you that if a man has long hair, it is a dishonor to him? And that is our quote and our myth of the day.
Very good. That is a long myth of the day, but we enjoy it.
My mic was off. Sorry, did I leave you hanging?
Yeah,
there,
I know. Just checking.
Thank you, Antonio.
Usually, yes.
With myth of the day.
We can edit now.
Myth of the day brought to you by Atheist Community of Milwaukee. Listen to their podcasts. What's it called? Design Flaws on YouTube.
Yes, but you have to say it just like that, with flaws, with
Design
about
Flaws.
4 A's.
Design Flaws.
That's the after 9 o'clock way of saying it. You know. Yes.
I mean, getting back to your proposed civics course, I think is a good idea. It's certainly better than what I think the Department of Justice is. Their new initiative to help promote religious freedom in schools, aimed to try to reduce discrimination, I think is going to be misused because it's going to be protected in PC. And rather than understand it, we're just going to have to say, we accept this, we tolerate, we respect it.
Every time I see the words restoration or religion or freedom within the same sentence, that to me just says, Hetfield and McCoy. And it's going to go down the idea of, I have religious freedom. Well, all of us do. It is there. It is clear, but at the same time, anytime I hear something like a religious freedom clause or initiative coming through, it's going to be abused. There are charities out there that we deal with. Well, we don't deal with them, but I see the effect of what they're doing in a local community. They will put forward somebody to try to test how far they're going to push that, and invariably they run back to the idea of, but you're hurting my religious freedom. Well, what about the religious freedom of the Sikh? What about the religious freedom of the atheist? What about the religious freedom of the Rasta? Oh, well, they haven't entered into my equation. Well, they should, because they belong here too, and that's their constitution just as much as the next person. I would be curious to know who has been advising that particular white paper, and I would guarantee you it has something to go back to Liberty Council, Liberty Institute, Alliance Defending Freedom, Focus on the Family, American Family Association, any of those guys.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. We should definitely check that out.
I teased before the show, but you're obviously a very educated guy and smarter than me, and a religious historian and a scholar of the or the New Testament. It sounds like a religious history, at least. What's your take on the myth theory, the Christ myth theory, and mythicism in general?
Oh, again, I know you've just thrown Ehrman's name out there. I used to study with some people who were part of the Jesus Seminar, and at Brite Divinity School, which is a wonderful oasis in Texas. It's like quite, progressive in its approach. I had people who, were instructors of New Testament and didn't believe in any of that sort of stuff either. And Some of them had their own dialogue in the classes to say that he was perhaps a real person who had a big story wrapped up around him when perhaps a political coup failed, and so you had to then say, okay, well, let's go back and do some wonderful historical redaction to say this and this and this and this. All of these prophecies must have been this particular person, so it was a great story that was told. At the same time, like the Egyptians, how are you going to miss seeing, thousands and thousands of people crossing a desert when the Egyptians had outposts? I mean, the BBC has put this out there not too long ago. Likewise, if someone really caused that much of a fracas or a hoo-ha or a ruckus or whatever word you want to say, and the Romans didn't write about it, come on. There's got to be some other source criticism that shows that. At the time of Adolf von Harnack, when he was writing about source Q and showing that the Markan Gospel was probably the historical account, and then there's some sort of sayings account, hence, source Quelle, or the question, and that between these two things, then you just develop this huge story on top of that, and then you have Jesus making mud pies and cursing someone and turning them into a log and floating them downstream, and other non-canonical pseudepigraphal gospels. I am such a post-theist that none of these things make a bit of difference to me anymore. I have other things that I've been working with over the years since I've moved away from that kind of theological belief. And that, I joked about it, but I am pleased to say I gave up church for Lent 18 years ago, and I have kept that Lenten
Never
promise.
looked back.
Oh, yeah, I love it. So
Brian,
there's other things that I'm more interested in than that. So.
A lot of vocabulary words in that last soundbite there, that last statement from our guest Jason Heap. Brian, what do you think about that? Fracas, he said.
I like them all. I mean, I just like hearing Lenten too. It reminds me of being like Catholic, of giving something up. I've forgotten about Lent for a bit.
Oh, there you go.
Good segue to next week's guest is Edwin Herbert, the author of Mythos Christos, and if my Greek is as terrible as I think it is, that probably means Christ myth. Mythos Christos, author Edwin
Yes,
Herbert.
that's going to be cool.
Next week, we're joined by Jason Heap. He's United Coalition of Reason, and among the alphabet soup of organizations in our in our movement and in our country is also the Atheist Alliance of America, and we're lucky enough to have Melissa Pugh with us too. Say hi, Melly. How are you doing?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing great.
You have exciting news regarding June 4th.
I do have exciting news that I actually just got yesterday, and it's pretty much confirmed, I think. I hope. Anyways, so we will be presenting the Richard Dawkins Award to Dr. Lawrence Krauss right before his speech on the 4th on stage in front of all those people.
Not we will. You mean you will.
I will, my vice president will, but we as my organization.
Right, but you had to get up and speak.
I have to get up and give a speech, yes.
Is that frightening?
A little bit. No, I'll be all right.
What if there's 100,000 people?
Stop it.
You guys are hanging out. You guys are hanging out, and you came up here together. What do your organizations do together? Are you working on projects together? Is it just coincidence? What's up with the...
Actually, I'm the new coordinator for Chicago Coalition of Reason.
Whoa.
Yeah. So, the former coordinator had children, or baby, Hemet has. So I'm the new coordinator, but that's on hold for now because I got to do Reason Rally first, and then I'll get Chicago.
Yeah.
Chicago's a mess. Chicago's just a mess, so I have to fix it.
Yeah, what's up with Chicago? Here we are. Here we are in
talking about
Milwaukee.
that the last
yeah,
time.
we're making like huge strides, and we're throwing conferences. And I look at Chicago, and we see like 50 neighborhood groups, and we visited some of those neighborhood groups, and they're great, but hard to get them together and get to do something a little bit big and a little bit splashy for the second city, the nation's third biggest city. But
it is. So I'm going to be working on that.
Yeah, hope to see some good things and hope to get involved. We're too close.
Yeah.
We do something in the middle.
Yeah, we can do something in the middle
with everybody.
Yeah, with everyone, and do something in Skokie or Evanston, something like that.
I mean, sometimes it's weird. I feel like, when you give up religion, in some ways you think, God, I have so much more time. But yeah, then we turn around and spend it back here, which is an irony, to be sure.
Yeah, especially with the activism.
Yeah, but I think it's a good thing, bringing people together. What we did at the debate, the first Buzz Belief debate, and I got to sit between an atheist and a devout Catholic and see that they were getting along, when I think that those two probably wouldn't have the best things to say about each other if you would have just given atheist, devout Catholic.
Yes.
So we are doing good. It is worth the time in the sun.
It is. Jason, where do you stand on the terminology and the million monikers that we all go by, whether it's humanist, freethinker, secularist, rationalist, atheist, agnostic? Should we unite under the term atheism, or do you care? What are your thoughts on that?
I usually use the word non-theism because I'm trying to help people out there realize that non-theism is all-encompassing, and that there are, not all Christians are Protestant, not all Muslims are Ibadi, but at the same time, I will let you know that if you use humanism as your title, you actually are invoking constitutional privilege that have five court cases, High Court as well as Supreme Court, that say humanism is a sincerely held belief akin to any other sincerely held belief, like Judaism is to a Jew and Christianity is to a Christian. Anytime that a person says, well, I'm an atheist, you've actually just allowed the groups that want to push you down keep you down, because the Constitution and the recent laws have been made in such a way that actually profit religion. But if you say, as a humanist, this is my sincerely held belief, there are court cases that say, oh yeah, you're right, and they have to defer to that.
Can you have two sincerely held beliefs, though? I couldn't claim that I'm a Jew and a Christian, but I could claim that I'm a Jew and a humanist, or a Christian and a humanist, or an atheist, right?
I don't know the law.
But I wonder if that would create snags. I'm just thinking out loud.
That's the best argument I ever heard against using the term atheism. Yeah. You know what I mean? If humanism has a legal foothold that gets us a little further along, I'd be willing to listen to that.
That's why you can have humanist religious meetings in prisons, and they have to accommodate you.
Well, then there's definitely strength to it.
Right.
Yeah, I wondered what might happen if you consider yourself part of two. But maybe you could. Maybe you could be Hindu and Jewish.
Well, there's secular Jews.
Mm-hmm.
There's a group, isn't there?
More than one.
There's a couple groups.
Society for Humanistic Judaism.
Yes.
There's that, and there's the congregation. They have a Hebrew name. The guy we saw him speak at Skeptic Camp 2 years ago. And I wish I could remember. But it's a humanistic Jewish.
That's right. Well, there's quite a few synagogues and shuls that are part of the SHJ.
Right.
And there's also the Association of Humanistic Rabbis. So, I mean, again, it's quite interesting what we have out there, and what, how broad the spectrum is. And, it for people that are prepared to be rational and think and talk, have a discussion, even if they don't agree with you, they're going to come away educated and realize, oh, it wasn't what I thought it was.
Well, I mean, and atheism is just a definition if you think about it. A being non, theism being deity, so non-deity. So basically, I think everything, secularism, humanism, all those things, they do fall under atheism, because it's the word of not believing in a deity. So that's what that was just
right.
But an educated Christian would have less of a chance to piss off an atheist in a conversation than one that wouldn't. You would, if you like the person, you don't want to tick them off. So that's why I generally think that kind of education is good. You gave a great example on Germany. Can you give that one with the Turkish, the small Turkish minority? And I mean, this was good about just kind of cultural misunderstanding.
Yeah, I've got some mates up in Bielefeld in the north, kind of underneath the Bremerhaven in Bremen, and there were certain Turkish Muslim communities that were saying, we will not accept your white German imams. We want to have Turkish imams. And of course, the German government was saying, well, I'm not so sure about that. Making the noises of, well, we'll take it to the European Court of Human Rights. Okay. So then they brought these guys in, and of course, there's a non-understanding of something as simple as das Nachbarschaft. And at 10 o'clock at night, it must be quiet. And of course, they're saying, nope, my culture says this is when we begin to ramp it up. And they're saying, Willkommen ins Deutschland. And they're just like, excuse us. Oh, okay, sorry. So again, there's the not wanting to become part of the greater group, and emphasizing, I am the minority and you have to do what I want, otherwise I'm going to tell Bubba about you, and it just turns nasty.
It almost seems like religious exchange programs might actually be a good idea, where you live in a different culture a little bit to digest it. But I wonder if some that are such insular communities that simply wouldn't allow you. I doubt I could be Amish for a week, and they just wouldn't let me in.
Even if you were living in an Amish paradise.
But they wouldn't want me, as much as I might want that.
Yeah, but you get that everywhere, so.
I mean, I'll be honest with you. What I saw in the Middle East was a very different way of living as a Muslim as to what I used to teach about in the UK, or when I was in parts of China where Taoism began, and seeing Shinto temples in Japan. That was completely different to what I was teaching in the UK, which was a fairly middle-of-the-road PC, keep it clean, keep it happy, make everything jolly, don't upset people, that kind of thing. And it was different.
Tell us some of the stories.
Oh, in the Kingdom of Bahrain, there was a causeway that went from Saudi into Bahrain, and you would see the Saudis just blazing over this causeway, and they would get into the Bahraini hotels, and the
Now, Bahrain's an island, right?
Bahrain's a little island off the coast, yeah, and they were in these red and white schmerks, right, and they would throw them off, and they would go straight to the bar on a Friday, and they would just order up what they wanted to and just tank up. And it was sort of like, hey, isn't this haram? Yeah, I know, but damn, it's nice. That kind of stuff.
And who are the Bahrainis getting upset about this? Or
of course not, because Bahrain has very little money. So it was like, yeah, come on, Saudis, we'll do this for you. Even in East London, I had friends that were very devout Muslims, and they would go to the pub with you on a Friday, and you would say, wait a minute, what about your Juma prayer? And he's like, we did all the prayers before, and it's my time to buy, because one of the earlier surah in Quran says not to be drunk when you do your prayers, so that's going to be my interpretation rather than no alcohol
great.
passing over your lips.
Right, there you go.
You think, okay, well, you found a loophole. Well done. You've managed to trick Allah, and But we do the same thing in the Church of England. It's just sort of, well, I don't know. It's like having a spine made of gelatin. So
it's okay to have sex if you love her.
Yeah, that's it.
We see that in the Catholic Church too, especially in the where the missionaries are doing their work in South America and Africa, where people, have a feeling if you just do the work that you're supposed to do, you're good. You go to church, you pray, you get forgiven, and then you go and you cheat on your wife and you drink or whatever it is that you do.
Exactly.
That's exactly why you go to church,
Yeah.
to get absolved of that sort of behavior. It's absolutely expected.
Yeah.
I think that's a nice.
I saw a lot of that as an Episcopalian, which is the Church of England, basically.
Yeah, that's what goes on. Well, we're about out of time. Jason, hit us with the websites again.
You can find two of this. One of is in United Coalition of Reason, unitedcor.org, or at the same time, we also administrate a site called the Secular Directory, seculardirectory.org. You can type in your postcode, your zip code, and search from a 5 to 125 mile radius around any city or zip code in the States, or as well as major cities around the world, and you can find about 3,000 non-theistic groups that we know of. That resource is made available free of charge for everybody to look up. At the end of the day, between Secular Directory and United Core, nobody needs to feel like they are alone in this world.
Well said. He's so British. He pretends he's not, but he's so British. He's Jason Heap. Melly Pugh, what's up with AA of A? Tell us where to find that.
Okay. You guys can find us, of course, on Facebook or at Atheist Alliance of America. And our website is that I just redid. I just redid the entire website by myself.
Nice.
So it's www.atheistallianceamerica.org. And also Twitter. I'm more active than our Twitter page. So you can just follow me on Melly P80.
At Melly P80.
At Melly P80.
Yeah, you've been ramping up your Twitter activity. You got a Twitter, Jason, or no?
At United Core.
At United Core.
I don't want the attention, so just
You don't manage that account.
You heard him. He doesn't want the attention.
I do manage the account. I just don't want.
You can Google him. He's Jason Heap. He wants no attention.
He's not selling any books.
Look him
I
up
just
today.
can't.
Not an anti-theist.
I don't know the passwords.
Right.
I was like, I'll just use my own Twitter account.
Good deal. Well, thanks for joining us, both of you.
Thank you.
And thank you all for listening. We will see you again next week for Edwin Herbert. Take it easy, everybody.
Cheers for
Bye-bye.
your time.